welcome to Allie Reynolds.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
It's nice to meet you.
You.
Shiver is out on paperback soon. Do you know
28th of October.
28th of October, awesome.
Yeah.
Which is on Thursday here.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Awesome. And it's had a lovely new jacket design. It looks class.
Yes, that's right.
Please, can you tell the listeners a little bit about it to start with?
Yes, certainly. So Shiver is a psychological thriller set in the French Alps. It begins as 5 former snowboarding friends are invited to an isolated mountaintop reunion. It's high in a tiny ski resort where they used to train 10 years ago until tragedy struck. So it's the off season now and the resort is very quiet. They meet at the bottom of the cable car, which is running just for them. As they take the cable car up the long ride to the mountain, there's some confusion over who invited them. And when they reach the top, the building on the glacier is dark and deserted. An icebreaker game has been laid out for them. The game reveals some of their darkest secrets and suggests that one of them is a killer. But the cable car is no longer running. If they want to learn the truth, they need to find out what really happened that winter 10 years ago and see if they can get off the mountain alive.
That's
the pitch. It's very cool. Did that come based out of your own, obviously not Somebody's a Killer, but based out of your own former snowboarding experience?
Well, a very long time ago, I was a semi-professional freestyle snowboarder in the French Alps. And I was trying to write a book set there for about 20 years and not getting anywhere. And then I finally put it aside and got the idea for this one. And it was a little bit inspired by those mountains themselves. You know, it's such an incredibly dangerous place. And that world up on the glacier, it's unlike, anywhere else, really. The weather can come in and change really quickly. You can get cut off. It's just very isolated and seems really far from civilization. It's so easy to have accidents up there. I also saw a newspaper article, so that provided a lot of kind of a seed for the idea. I read about a hand and 2 shoes protruding from the ice, and one couple out hiking in the summer had seen it, and then they'd uncovered the body of somebody who'd gone missing about 30 years earlier.
Oh, wow.
So it just seemed to offer so much, potential for a thriller. Like, who was this person? Was his death an accident or not? And then I got researching people missing in the mountains, and I was horrified to hear that the first resort where I spent my first season in the foot of Mont Blanc, it was Chamonix, a big ski resort. There's currently about 160 people missing in those mountains. So it's such a common thing. And my imagination went to work.
Did you ever have difficulties yourself, or were there any hairy moments during your time there?
Yeah, well, mostly my difficulties were from falling and smashing myself and breaking things, because I did freestyle rather than the sort of backcountry big mountain snowboarding. Broken bones were my main risk. But then I would sometimes go, off the beaten track if there was deep, fresh snow. And it was very easy to end up in a scary situation where, you'd see little slides of avalanches, going down. And the fog could come in very fast. And even if you knew the mountain well, you could actually get quite lost. There might be cliffs and stuff everywhere. If there were people above you on the mountain, you could sometimes hear slides coming down. So there were quite a few scary moments, but fortunately nothing too bad.
Great, isn't it, when you're writing a thriller and even the landscape that you're using could be the killer, could be the threat. I think there's something there's something we all understand in that, is that nature's bigger than us and can often do us a lot more damage than we want it to.
I love natural, dangerous landscapes more than anything in thrillers. Yeah, whether it's mountains or forests or beach. Yeah.
Yeah, that sense of isolation and
Yeah.
so far from help, I think is.
And maybe your phones
quite
don't work, you know, or you can't just call the police and get help. So yeah.
That makes your life easier as a writer, definitely.
Yes, definitely.
Why don't they just call the police? Oh, they can't.
Was first of all, was snowboarding something that you always wanted to do?
It was as soon as I tried it. Yeah, I was doing it very much in the early years of the sport. I think the first time I tried it, the shop didn't even have the normal soft boots that we see now. They were just sort of putting us into the very hard ski boots that were massively uncomfortable. But yeah, after quite a few falls on that first day or two, then I really quickly became hooked. It's just an amazing feeling. And I think after the first week or so, once you learn to turn, you quite quickly can progress to, jumping. Yeah.
Amazing. And then from that, was there always a novel in the back of your head, or did that come from what you were doing?
It was really, I just wanted to write a book set there. And at the time, I wasn't sure even if it would be a thriller or not. I loved reading romances as well. I liked reading chick lit. That was quite popular at that time, 20 years ago. So I think the first novel that I was trying to write was kind of chick lit. And then it got darker and darker and darker as I got, really into the thriller genre. So, and it really, to me, it offers so much potential as a thriller writer, just because of those dangers. You've got a sense of threat all the time, that sense that you can put one foot in the wrong place and step right off the mountain, or maybe somebody would push you, or you'd fall off something. Yeah.
And was there always, even like in your teenage years, I want to write a novel?
Yeah, there was definitely. My very first job was a Saturday job when I was 14 years old in the local secondhand bookshop. And I did that like all through my teen years, like weekends and holidays. And so I was just surrounded by books. I think I read through every single Agatha Christie there was.
Cool.
So yeah, I just thought, I would love to write a book one day. But I remember the owner impressed on me how hard it was, that it was almost impossible to, make a living as a writer. So I always kind of thought it would be something I did on the side, and I would need, a real job as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the reality for most people. Even if you have one incredible success, it doesn't always follow the next or the next.
Strange industry, isn't it? Yeah.
And being able to predict the zeitgeist is really very difficult. Very difficult. You never know where people are going to move.
Yeah, that's so true.
Pandemics and everything else notwithstanding.
Yeah.
Has the pandemic affected how you're writing, or is it sort of giving you free rein?
So I've got 2 young kids, and I've been a single mom since I divorced pretty much about when the pandemic started. So yeah, we're very fortunate here in Australia. Well, in Queensland where I live, we didn't get so bad. So long lockdowns. I should say that some areas like Melbourne, of course, had the world's longest lockdown. So I felt very lucky. The school was shut for a few months that year. But having my 2 very young kids at home, trying to homeschool, I could not work whatsoever. So I fell massively behind with my deadline for book 2. It was quite frustrating because I had this massive opportunity, and then I just had to watch all these months ticking down and all these unforeseen things. And I'm sure so many other people were affected in that similar way. And then this year, when some other countries are sort of coming out of their lockdown, we've still been aiming for COVID 0 in Queensland. So it just meant a single case, we'd be locked down at 6 hours notice. So again, I had quite a lot of weeks with my kids at home, playing soccer over my head as I try to do the structural edits of book 2. So yeah, it's been fairly tough.
It's mad how everybody's just had to go, oh yeah, no, you used to be really precious about silence and the right environment and the right, and now you're just like, I've tapped out 10 words while somebody's beating a ball against my head. Another 10 in a minute.
Yeah.
And then my daughter lives in Melbourne. She's studying.
Oh, really?
She's doing a master's at MIT, and she said it's just impossible. That you can't move, you can't breathe, you can't think, you can't do anything.
I can
just come out again, haven't they?
Yeah. Yeah, they've just come out, but I fear there's we've got to change our attitude a lot about living with COVID, because at the moment, for example, if one person has COVID, goes to a cafe, everybody that was in that cafe will be isolated at home, all their close contacts, all their family, you have to isolate at home for 2 weeks, the cafe shuts down.
I mean, it's crazy. Economically, that's crazy. We're in the opposite
That's
situation
true.
where it feels
Yeah.
like our government's response to COVID is to go, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Work through it, because so we, you know, like our middle kid currently has COVID. The rest of us are still allowed to go out. He's okay. He's just, you know, his headaches and feverish and whatever. We all had to do a test. It came back negative. Everybody carries on their normal day. Everybody's going into work. Everybody's going into school, and you just think this is crazy, because we know from him that the people he came into contact with that gave him it in the first place, he didn't even show any symptoms until 4 or 5 days later, and the tests were still coming up negative then. And then they came up super positive, and then, so you're just sort of sitting there on that 5-7 day countdown going, is today the day I feel sick? Is today but it just seems like we've just gone to a free-for-all. No masks, no bother, don't worry, off we go.
Two opposite ends of the spectrum, and I don't know which is right. Or I heard maybe Norway and Sweden and Denmark are getting it a little bit, you know, a bit more right than everywhere else at the moment.
Well, we're sitting, I think, at what, 50,000 cases, nearly 2,000 in hospital, and a couple of hundred dying a day. You're just like, I don't think this is the right way to handle it.
Yeah, my mom and my sister. So I do worry.
But anyway, that's, you know, I think it's just been a weird couple of years with trying to run businesses or write or live lives, and, you know, as you say, handle relationships and everything else. It's
so true.
Just a weird time to be. It's really, I wonder how many not pandemic based stories will come out of it, but very you know, like enclosed,
could be locked room
claustrophobic feeling things.
Popular. Maybe we can relate to the locked room mystery because we're locked in. Like,
I think so. They certainly, and this is what I mean about Zeitgeist. They certainly seem to be like everything's. How locked can the locked room be? Kind of thing. We were talking to Guy Morpus about Five Minds a couple of weeks back now, and that's, you know, it's like it's locked room, but it's inside a one body, you know.
As locked as it can get.
That's a fantastic story.
What a book. Going back to before the pandemic, then, with the writing of Shiver, how you know, what was your sort of journey to publication and your writing day? What did it look like and stuff like that?
For sure. So I had 20 years off and on battling this other snowy set book that became a thriller towards the end. I worked full-time as an English teacher for about 15 years. So writing was always something I did as a hobby. I began submitting short fiction to women's magazines and getting more and more published. And then when my kids were very little, I kept losing teaching jobs when my kids were sick, until I thought, well, no school's going to have me soon. So I decided to focus on the writing for a year and see where I could take it, just give everything I could to the writing. And I was extremely lucky. I had, in 6 months, I wrote Shiver. It just came really, really smoothly after 20 years of not managing to finish the previous one. I think just some stories come more smoothly than others, but maybe I got several ideas and they all kind of sparked together, and I plotted it all out. I think that was another big difference. I never had planned or plotted a story before. I just used to write and see where I ended up, which resulted in really messy storylines and confusion. So I had a plan for Shiver. I looked for agents through the slush pile, and I was very lucky to find an agent who took me through a couple of drafts. And then she broke the news that we had quite a lot of interest from publishers, and it ended up in a 10 publisher auction, which must be every writer's dream. I honestly could not imagine.
That's class. And congratulations.
What did you do when you got that call?
It was all done. as well as the UK auction. Before, the day or two before, I'd had pre-ants from France and then Germany and then the US. So it was just one thing after another. I think when I actually found an agent, I just burst into tears because that was just unbelievable enough. You know, you dream about finding an agent and you always hear about how hard it is. I remember I was actually in Aldi doing the weekly shop one morning when the editor, quite high up in Penguin US, called me from New York. And it was just unbelievable moment. And yeah, it was just a whole dream that month when it all just started happening. I really felt like I could wake up and it wouldn't really have happened.
Did you go mental in Aldi after that call? Did you just be like, yeah, I can do whatever I want now?
I didn't, because actually I was on a very low income for a long time as a teacher and then a working mum. And it just felt like, no, I've got to be really careful because you sold one book, but you just don't know if you can write another. So I already kind of had a sense of how precarious the industry was. So just kind of take
it's that thing where you go, wow, that's a great deal, but you kind of amortize that over the 20 years.
That's right.
You're trying to do it, you go, well, it's not such a great deal, but it is a great deal.
I know what will happen, because then after lots of amazing publicity for Shiver, it ended up coming out at the start of a 4-month lockdown in the UK where all the bookstores were shut. So that was, really disappointing, I guess, to my publisher there. I felt so sorry for them. And you just couldn't foresee what was going to happen. I was supposed to travel to London and New York, to do signings or events. And of course, we haven't been able to leave the country for nearly 2 years now. So
and this is why we ended up, it's why we started the podcast, but B, why we ended up doing an online festival, because it ended up meaning that we could be far more inclusive to both the readers and the authors who couldn't necessarily always travel or wouldn't get invited, but
sure. No, that's fantastic.
It's created good positives like that, I think, but at the same time there's so many authors. I know, Chris, we launched your first one about a month before the first lockdown, and we've launched every single other one during a state of lockdown or pandemic since. 6 books later, 7 books later.
Amazing. Wow.
We've got high hopes for the next one.
Yeah, we might actually be able to see people in a room.
Yeah, that would be so nice. Yeah.
Have you managed to do anything for the release? Did you have like friends?
I had there were lockdowns going off and on, and the COVID situation was quite precarious there here at the time. I did a lot of Zooms with US, UK and Australia in those first couple of months. I did one live event at a school, I think in about April, when the restrictions eased here, talking to about 50 people and book signings, and that was really fun. Yeah, but I think that's the only real live event I've actually done. Yeah.
Well, hopefully for the next one, things will be a bit more normal.
Thank you.
Before we talk about the next one, we've got some very good, very cerebral Twitter questions. People have asked very good. You've attracted a smart crowd. Evelyn would like to know, first of all, she says, I always love hearing about authors' process. So we've kind of talked about where the seed of the idea began, but a really good part of it was what elements help unravel the story. So you talked about plotting and that helped, but what other parts of the writing process were helpful?
So I think I had the idea about the hand and the feet from the ice. And of course, Agatha Christie's amazing story, And Then There Were None. And I thought, well, what about if we took that story to the snow, rather than on an island? It's high up on a glacier in an isolated environment. So I sort of combined those two ideas. And also I think the athletes themselves was a really big seed, that I felt that athletes make quite good thriller characters, I think, because you know, they're very driven, very determined, and very focused. And that competitive side, I think it's not at all rare for athletes to really seem like a really nice person, and then in competition they absolutely switch to somebody else. So I wanted to show them in fiction, and I had that idea about the person going missing, and I thought, well, who might go missing on a mountain? Maybe winter sports athletes, and who might want to kill them? Maybe one of their rivals. So I was kind of plotting how that might play out. And I had an idea about a group of friends 10 years ago, and then a tragedy struck, and 10 years in the future, if we trap them all together, maybe they would have some secrets and things they really didn't want the others to know about that time 10 years ago. And how could I force that to come out? So what I sort of, the way I put all of that together, and I plotted out scenes. So I had a giant whiteboard, and I ended up with 70 or 80 scenes. I had 2 colors of Post-its for my 2 timelines. And we start off in the present day. For a few chapters, we see our characters until they're trapped on the mountaintop together. And then we flash backwards. We alternate to sort of get this piece together the story of the tragedy that happened 10 years ago. And then, of course, we end in the present day to sort of see how it all plays out and who's going to survive at the end. So I spent about a whole month planning, which seemed ages at the time. I thought, what am I doing? I'm just shuffling paper. Is this actually achieving anything? But it was so important to find the best order. I think it was time that really was well spent. You had to have a logical order and, you know, build towards something. Yeah. And I couldn't have held that in my head, that sort of story, I don't think. No. So yeah, that visual representation was just massively helpful.
I saw a fantastic video by Dustin Lance Blank, you know, Black, the screenwriter.
Okay, yeah.
And he's got like a 3-meter desk, and he writes on those record cards.
Yeah.
And he says in the plotting stage, he just goes in every morning, and he writes it. He's got everything in bullet points.
Yeah.
All the scenes, and then he reads what he's got, and if it's still making sense, then he'll carry on and do the next bit. And every morning start again, read at the beginning, but they're all laid out on the desk like the storyline. And then you get to a point and go, I'm bored with this, or I shuffle it. And it was just it was an interesting way of doing it, rather than, you know, like the book I'm plotting at the moment, there's 6 different stories across 2 potential timelines. So
yeah,
if you change one thing, the timelines diverge, and one thing has changed, but so people are completely different, but somehow they still have to keep crossing at significant points.
Complicated. Wow.
So, what it is, I took a picture of it the other day, but basically when you talk about Post-it notes,
they've run out of colors.
You know, you just like, I think Post-it need to invent more colors, because there's just not there's not enough differentiation.
I wonder with the index cards, how long he spends on that process of writing out those scenes like that. Like,
I think it's a significant part of it, because I think he said when he then it starts in bullet points of 10 key scenes, and then you push them aside and fill in the gaps, and push them aside, and so you spill that your beginning end are still there, and your key inciting incidents are still there. And you're filling in the gaps in between and stretching out the narrative. By the time you get to the end and go, right, I'm ready to write it, I think it's, for him, he said it's a matter of putting the dialogue in.
Yeah,
I mean, the video is somewhere on YouTube, and it's just...
Tell me his name. It was Dustin
Lance Black.
He
wrote Milk and directed Milk. You know, that Harvey Milk story.
Yeah, thank you.
And he's an incredible writer, but it's just such an interesting plot way, you know, like if you've got the space for a 3-meter table that never gets, you know, pushed aside for homework or dinner, or
you wouldn't want to have kids, like, although you wouldn't want a window to be open and then the wind blows them all away.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, like, I thought, well, if you've got a good whiteboard, you can do the same thing with Post-its.
Yeah.
And this is not sponsored by Post-it, obviously. It's starting
That
to
is
feel.
awesome. Well, post-its can be a bit small sometimes, so I like the sound of the index cards. Something I like to do with my post-its is try and get cliffhangers on the end of each one, because I think that helps kind of with the pace, and especially if you've got a dual timeline, you kind of want the reader to really want to get back to that time period and not kind of be annoyed to keep switching. So then I would have my last line of the post-it, which would hopefully be a cliffhanger or something, you know, interesting or dramatic. And I would highlight it, you know, to know that I've got those points happening. Yeah.
It's a really good way to do it.
We were talking to Brian McGilloway last week, wasn't it, Chris? You and I, and he's got a similar thing which is set across two timelines, two specific time periods. And he said he found in the end he wanted to use concatenation, so using the same two words at the end of one period to pull you into the beginning at the next, or the same sentence, whatever. And he had a lot of fun playing with that kind of stuff, which I think is also, it's nice to find ways to channel your reader through without it feeling like, oh shit, now we're back in the past, or a big clunky, you know, you read quite a lot with a big clunky timeline where you're just like, where are we now? Why is it February? What is this? So, finding the ways to make it feel seamless, isn't it?
Yes.
And you talked about character, and there was a question from Elizabeth, and I've got a question that links off it. So she said, were any of the characters based on people you met during your snowboarding career?
I saw that. I'm very happy to say that I didn't meet any like highly competitive people like that, but I was competing very much in the early years of the sport. There was no money in the sport, you know, we were just mostly doing it for the fun of it, and it was extremely dangerous. So I felt that it was a really, really supportive and friendly environment. I almost kind of feel the more dangerous the sport competitors are, I'm not sure, whereas in a very well-established and well-paid sport like basketball or rugby or golf, you know, where there's massive money at stake, then I've heard a lot more about the absolute competitiveness of the characters. So I think the characters were mostly based on my research and my interest in those other sports. There are so many stories about sports people playing mind games with their rivals. They would just do anything to win, and maybe some quite devious tactics. And I thought it would be a lot of fun to take those to a glacier where we're already in a very dangerous environment, and there's just so much potential for foul play there. But I'm happy I didn't experience any of that. It would have been a bit scary.
And it's interesting what you said before about people sort of changing, because I reckon I'm quite a nice fella, but on the football pitch, I would hate me. Like, I turn into someone else where I'm so competitive, and I've had to apologize to people where I've gone a bit too far and stuff.
I think in your last book, you wrote you on the football pitch and everybody hated it.
I think, that's the one that's coming next, isn't it? Yeah, definitely, that's me. Or like, I got invited to like, there were people saying like, would you want to, or like, if there's anyone around the area wants to play, just give me a shout kind of thing. So on my first one where I didn't know anybody, I went and I was saying like, somebody mark him. And in the end, I grabbed someone I didn't know's shoulder and pushed him towards the guy and was like, mark him. And then at the end, I was like, I am so sorry. And my name's Chris, by the way. Nice to meet you. But a horrible man. But when you were competing, did you have two sides to you? Did you feel like did you change on the sports field?
See, I don't think I'm competitive at all. I think it's why I failed as an athlete, basically. I did it. I wanted to compete because I loved it, and I wanted to spend as much time as I possibly could doing it, ideally for people to pay me so I could do it. As it was, I was working 3 or 4 jobs every summer for 6 months to save up money so that I could fund my winter's training. But yeah, I don't think I was competitive enough, and also not brave enough. I wasn't prepared to risk everything to land new tricks, and especially when seeing others friends broke their necks and were told they would never walk again, and you just it makes you question what risks you're prepared to take, and I wasn't prepared to take those risks. So yeah, I eventually pulled out. of the sport. So in a way, Miller for me was kind of how I wished I could be that brave and that's, you know, that ambitious, but no, I wasn't.
And Dan Stubbings, who asks incredible questions nearly every week, says, in your opinion, what are the fundamental building blocks of a good novel?
Yeah, that is an amazing question, a really hard question. For me, it's very hard to give a short answer, but what made a massive difference for me from my 20 years of trying and failing to complete a story and then Shiver, I decided that plot and story was my weakness. So I got hold of every book on writing craft that I could find and really studied story. I loved Story by Robert McKee, Truby's Anatomy of Story, Scene and Structure by Jack Bickham, Into the Woods by John York. So I guess I was trying to understand a lot of those concepts, many of which come from screenwriting. So, for example, Truby is massive on having an underdog hero who's up against, you know, much more powerful opponents. You also need a hero with who wants something desperately, and of course, something stops him from getting it. I think in thrillers and crime, we need a strong central mystery, and then hopefully you can see it in some surprises and twists along the way. For me, setting is massively important. Just it creates atmosphere and maybe can create a sort of fresh, dangerous natural settings, because that's what I like, and really make that a big part of the story. You know, what could happen in this setting? How can the setting and the environment affect the people there? I also heard it advised that the characters should have as much conflict as possible between them. So, for example, in Shiver, we've got these sometimes best friends. They might also be closest rivals in the competition. They might be lovers as well, or ex-boyfriends or girlfriends of somebody. And maybe it might be siblings as well. So I tried to put as much conflict between all those characters to create an interesting story.
That's an excellent answer. That's great. And some of those books mentioned, I've seen people talk about loads, and they seem like a really good idea. So yeah, excellent. The Bay, please, can we talk about it?
Yeah, sure. So I'm still editing it. It's not quite finished, but it basically has a very different setting. It's set on a remote Australian beach. And so we've got the ocean and the heat rather than the snow and the ice. It's similar in that it's got a small cast of youngish characters who are in quite an isolated location. They've all got secrets, as they did in Shiver. Basically, you could pitch it as The Beach meets Point Break. So they're two of my absolute favorite stories. I love in The Beach how we've got these, you know, these backpackers who go to this new world of this amazing beach where they're quite isolated there, but there's also this dark side. And in Point Break, I really love that plot line where we've got this investigator who is also a really keen surfer, and he's sent to investigate these kind of dubious seeming surfers, and he kind of gets sucked into their gang. So he's torn between his job and his duty and his actual, you know, passion and this belonging to this group. So it kind of combines those two storylines.
And when are we expecting that? Early or sort of mid 2022?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
Very cool. So are you on the last stages of edits now, or are you?
It's on about, and everybody about how hard book 2 is, and yeah, it's certainly been really hard for me because Shiver took about a month to plan, which felt like a lot at the time, but The Bay I probably spent 3 months or so, and it's kept evolving as I've been writing it. Whereas Shiver, I would sort of have an idea and it would work, and then another idea and that would work. I've gone down a lot of dead ends with the Bay and had to take different turns, and it's really taken probably 13 months so far. A lot of difficulties. There was my divorce, there was COVID. I also suffered quite a bad head injury in the surf 18 months ago. And I smashed my head. I had delayed concussion. So I've had concentration problems, and it really seems to have affected me. I've struggled to concentrate as well as I could before.
Wow.
So I think the whole first year I was just, I would lose my train of concentration.
If the pressure of a second book after the success of a first like that isn't hard enough.
All the extra stuff.
There's so much expectation to be bigger, better, stronger than the last one, and then you kind of go, yes, but other circumstances are still happening. And
you read the reviews. Evan says don't read your reviews, but I do read my review. Hammer your confidence. So
we love reviews on this show.
Segue here, isn't it? So we play a game called the One Star Superstar, where we look at we won't read one of yours, but we've looked at your 1-star reviews, and we've picked a person.
Okay, interesting. I love that.
So a person that's fascinated us, and we've looked at what else they've reviewed, and you just have to tell us whether they've reviewed it as a 1-star or a 5-star.
Oh, really? Okay.
So this is somebody who's given your book a 1-star. We have to see what kind of things they are actually into.
Oh,
usually the most amazingly ridiculous people.
Well, I should say to start with, after a few, really bad reviews early on, I decided, and after reading other writers' advice about this, I decided below 3-star, I'm just not going to read it anymore, because it's probably not going to be helpful to me. There's a lot of people that do like it, and I will try to please them, and it's impossible to please everybody. So this is interesting. Go ahead.
I like it when you get this is the worst book ever, because it signifies that the reviewer has read every book in history and you have somehow stood at the top of that pile. I love it.
And this person is incredible. They've done something here which I don't know why, but you'll see what I mean. So the first product is a one-touch automatic can opener.
Oh my God. I am guessing 1-star because it arrived late or it came damaged or something.
Hello, 1-star, Sean.
I'm gonna say 1-star because it was a 2-touch automatic can opener.
Oh.
So it is a 1-star, so you both get a point. So it said, I bought one of these and it broke. I bought another because the company made it impossible to send back and I couldn't get a hold of anyone to help. So I've wasted over £30 for 2 useless tin openers that don't work. Don't bother. If I could give it 0 stars, I would. Wow. So just buy a different brand maybe, or if the first one doesn't work.
I bought this car. It broke on the first time I used it, so I bought another one exactly the same to see if that was.
She bought 2 can openers.
That is a great policy as a company, though. You make it so difficult to return anything that somebody just has to buy another one to test whether it works or not.
The next item is a mini criminal identifier self-defense spray. So it's like a red spray that you sort of spray, and then it would stain the face or the hands so they can't, find out.
Oh, I thought it was a spray that you'd spray and it would tell you whether the person was criminal or not.
I thought that was
not quite here today.
So 1-star or 5-star?
I think 5. I think that they probably loved it and they're going to take it out every time they go.
Okay. 5-star safety.
Yeah, they do seem like the kind of person who would do irrational things, like buy something like that so they can mark people they don't like and then report them as criminals. So if it's a good, I don't know, I'm going to say 1-star just because it didn't mark permanently enough.
Okay. How many do you think she bought?
the first one not work?
Well,
I think 3 for all her family as well.
yeah. Well, it's a 1 star.
Oh.
So sorry, Allie, but this product is rubbish. I bought 2, sprayed it, sprayed it on my hands to see if it worked, and within 5 minutes managed to wipe it off. What a waste of money! Absolutely rubbish. Why buy 2 straight out of the bat?
Did she buy 2 of Allie's book?
That's what I was wondering.
If she thought the first one was rubbish, maybe buying it again would make it better.
Yeah.
In which case, I've taken your money. So
Yeah.
very nice. What a weird person.
Yeah.
Is that a trait across most of their reviews? I hated this, so I bought another one.
Yeah, those were the only 2 that I found, but I didn't go through. Those were like the sort of near the top, and I thought this version of this game came from Matt Bezalowski, because there was this it's just this lovely thing. I think one of your reviewers that gave you a 1 star, Chris, the only thing that they'd liked was a pair of jogging bottoms. Yeah.
Anything that got 5 star, and somebody else given a 5-star review to an inflatable seagull or something. And you just like the most random things that people buy on Amazon and go, right, this has got 5 stars. And it's much more entertaining than just reading their 1-star review of your book, because you have to see what kind of a person gives you that.
Yeah. And then you're absolutely
it is
fine
hard,
with it.
isn't it, to please everybody? And I think, yeah, it really, if you're trying to write another book, it doesn't help at all. I mean, I'm glad I don't read the 1 or 2-star reviews. I did read a few that were absolutely furious about either who died or who a certain baddie was. And I kind of got thinking, well, in my books, quite a lot of people die and quite a lot of people do bad things. So if you're in one of my books, the chances are you do one of those 2 things, or maybe both. Maybe you do bad things and die. So it wasn't as though I was picking on someone particular. You know, you just, crime books, somebody is the baddie, and bad things happen.
And some people die, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think people... There's a sort of weird things just have the concept of what it was they thought they were going to be reading in the first place.
Yeah.
And then, but you're like, the cover leaves you in no doubt. The blurb leaves you in even less doubt. So why on earth you'd be upset that people die or people are bad?
That's right. Yeah.
But then you just kind of go, well, you can't fix stupid, so there's not much you can do there. But it does change. It's weird that no matter how many 5-star reviews you read of your stuff, the 1 star that is really angry or vitriolic, it sticks with you a lot longer.
Yeah.
If Rob Parker was here, he'd be showing you, he's had all of his 1-star reviews made onto mugs that
really? Wow.
So he drinks from them while he's writing, just to remind himself just how much he can mean to people.
Oh, I love that.
Shiver's obviously done really well, and the buzz already about the bay coming out is, you know, you've seen people talk about it and stuff, so that must feel pretty cool.
It is amazing, yeah, and it also terrifying when I've still not finished writing it, because I don't think I'll be able to really breathe properly until I've finished it, and then I find some people that actually do like it, because until then you just don't know. All you know is you've written 1 book that people happen to like. I got incredibly lucky with that. And you just don't know if you can reproduce that. I think some authors do write 1 book that does really well for whatever reason and struggle to write another one. And then other writers write books once a year, a book a year, that is just incredible each time. So
yeah. Well, I think the key is to just take the pressure off yourself and, try it. Like everybody says, the first book you've written, you write for yourself, because you don't ever assume that you're going to get published. That's and once you've been published, there's an expectation that everybody's going to read it, because you suddenly realize that other people read your book. And so then you stop writing it for yourself, and you start, and then, there's a sense that the first draft should always just be for you, with the expectation that nobody else will ever see it, and then work from there to make it into something that, but also try not to please too many people. You've got your editors that you trust, and work with them because they know your style and they know how to pull the best out of you. But don't then go, oh, and these people didn't like that in this book, and these people did. Because, then you end up with a camel.
It's impossible, isn't it? One thing I did that I think helped before I started to write book 2 was I kind of got a list together of my absolute favorite books, whether it was thrillers or non-thrillers. and which books would I give 10 out of 10 to, my favorite few books each year. And I looked at the common ingredients in them and what were the things I absolutely loved about them. So to me, that was what I would try to include in my own writing. Those were the things I sort of was passionate about. So,
I think that's good. It also sort of reminds you of why you're in it in the first place.
Right.
Where the passion lies.
I love it. When you've got a deadline, the deadline can take away a lot of that passion, unfortunately.
Definitely. Because I used to I was a scuba diver, and then I became a scuba diving instructor, and I lost all the passion for scuba diving because you basically spend all of your time on your knees showing people how to take the mask off and take the regulator out, but you don't get to do any of the dive masters do the nice diving and the fun dives with the qualified people. And you've just got people who, come in to stand in the water and go, but I'm scared of fish. And you're like, this is not the thing. You all need to leave now. But it's funny when you the things that take away the passion, you have to find ways of getting back. And with writing, it's hard enough. So it's a nice idea to look at the things that you love and find common ingredients. What is it that's keeping me ticking on this?
Yes.
Cool. Well, speaking of which, then what are you reading right now?
I've always been a massive reader. I've usually read 80 to 100 books each year. Since I've become a writer, I've hardly had time to read. As soon as I finish this book, I want to do a whole lot more reading. But then the good side of that is you get sent some arts and advanced copy, really exciting new things that are about to come out. Recently, I finished Breathless by my name's gone, Amy McCullen, I think, and she is a female rock climber who's climbed some amazing massive mountains. So it's a thriller set in the Himalayas. A serial killer is stalking the death zone of the Himalayas. Like, how amazing a concept is that? And I really enjoyed that one because it was such a dangerous snowy environment. I also read Hostage by Claire McIntosh. She's one of my absolute favorite writers. I've read all her work. I love how she writes in that there's emotion as well as everything else in her thrillers. So I really
that was a great book, that
one. And another one, The Dark by Emma. It must be too tight. Emma. The Dark. And Emma Horton. Thank you. So that's a thriller set in Antarctica, in 24 hours darkness on this Antarctic research station where there's a serial killer. And I just love those really alternative, unique, fresh settings. That's often what made me pick up a book.
That's cool.
What about you, Sean?
I've finished reading, obviously, because we're publishing, but yesterday we got the first proofs of The Beaten Track by Louise Mangos. So that is going to have another little read while I'm away. But we got, speaking of proofs, I'm really looking forward to The Goodbye Coast by Joe Ide. And this is basically, it's the kind of stuff that we like to publish anyway, but it's sort of reinventing Raymond Chandler. And, that sort of, I love that kind of, relentless detective-y kind of story. So noirish and brutal, but so I've got that coming, ready to read.
Awesome.
What about you, Chris? You're ferreting behind you.
I am. I'm just about to finish Gabriel Bergmoser's the follow-up to The Hunted, called The Inheritance, and it's set in Melbourne and Port Douglas and stuff like that. So it's really good. And
I heard of that one. It sounds amazing. Yeah,
he's a great writer and a very cool guy. But it's bloody and very violent and very fast paced, and it's great. So I'm just about to finish that, and then I'm going to start. You've been reading this a while, Sean. The
I read that a little while ago. We got that a few weeks ago.
They're sending me one, and it hasn't arrived. Postage takes about 6 weeks to get here. It sounds really good.
It is. It's great. It's really cool.
I've done that.
It's incredibly engaging.
I've done the thing of reading the first page whilst reading something else, and then being like, I just really want to get started. So that's my next one.
Cool.
Awesome.
And that usually brings us to the end. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun to talk to you guys. And yeah, I loved all the questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Twitter were on it this week.
Yeah, Twitter was on fire.
Yeah.
Good luck with the edits, and hopefully this is the last structural pass.
Thank you. I hope so. And yeah, good luck with your COVID and the freedom there. I hope that continues.
Long may it continue. Freedom / ambivalence.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on the Blood Brothers podcast.
Thanks for coming. We'll tag you in when we post it.
Yes.
And good luck with the paperback launch on Thursday.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
We can't wait to read it.
Great.
Awesome.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.